I should have known Karen would never stop. After all the chaos she had already caused, stealing my hen, organizing a horse race in my field without permission, this woman seemed to thrive on making my life as difficult as possible. But even I couldn't have predicted her next move. This time she didn't just bend the rules, she shattered them. It all started with a strange rumbling sound that echoed through the air. At first, I thought it was distant thunder or maybe some heavy machinery working on a neighbor's property. But when the noise didn't stop, I knew something wasn't right. Days passed, and the sound grew louder. My curiosity got the better of me, and one morning, as I walked toward the back of my field, my heart nearly stopped. There, glinting under the sun, was a set of train tracks, freshly laid and stretching across my entire property, and before I could fully process what I was seeing, the ground trembled beneath my feet. I turned, and my jaw dropped as a full-sized train came rolling through, crushing my crops as if they were nothing. At that moment, my blood boiled. Who in their right mind would run a train through private property? And then it hit me, Karen. If anyone had the audacity to pull something this outrageous, it was her. Sure enough, as the train disappeared into the distance, there she was, standing on the edge of my field, her arms crossed and that smug, self-satisfied smile plastered on her face. I marched toward her, barely able to contain my anger. "What is this, Karen?" I demanded, gesturing to the destruction in front of me. She didn't even flinch. "Oh, the HOA approved a heritage train tour," she said sweetly, as if that explained everything. "Your field was the perfect place to lay the tracks. Isn't it exciting? It adds character to the neighborhood." Exciting? Watching a train destroy my property wasn't my idea of excitement. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my temper in check. "You can't just lay train tracks on private land without permission," I snapped. But Karen just shrugged. "Well, technically, the HOA can under the new Community Development Initiative. It's all in the bylaws. You really should keep up." She smirked as if she had already won, but I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. Not this time. I spent the next week digging through every legal document I could find. I pored over the HOA's updated bylaws, searching for any loophole, any mistake, and then I found it. While the HOA had the authority to approve community projects, they couldn't legally seize private property without a signed easement agreement. And guess what? Karen hadn't gotten one. That was my ace in the hole, but I wasn't going to stop there. If Karen wanted to play dirty, I was ready to beat her at her own game. I had a plan that would not only stop her, but would also turn the entire neighborhood against her. And the best part, she would never see it coming. I reached out to a local historical reenactment group, the kind known for their loud, over-the-top events. Using the same loophole Karen exploited, I invited them to hold a 3-day medieval festival right in my field. Within days, my property was transformed. Knights in armor clanged swords in mock battles, cannons boomed, and hundreds of visitors flooded in, trampling the pristine image Karen had worked so hard to maintain. The best part, the HOA's own rules protected cultural events, so there was nothing she could do to stop me. I made sure to publicize the festival everywhere: social media, local news, even a flyer campaign. It didn't take long before word spread like wildfire, and when the festival day arrived, it was absolute chaos, the kind that Karen couldn't control. Karen tried everything to shut it down. She sent complaint letters, called emergency HOA meetings, and even tried to get the local authorities involved. But I had done my homework, and everything I did was perfectly legal. The community loved the event, and more importantly, they started questioning Karen's leadership. Whispers of her abuse of power spread, and homeowners who once feared her began to push back. But the final blow came when I revealed my ace card, the missing easement agreement. I filed an official complaint with the county zoning board, exposing the illegal train tracks running through my property. Within weeks, the county ordered the HOA to remove the tracks. And Karen? She was hit with a personal fine for violating property laws. As the tracks were torn up and my field restored, I stood on my porch, watching the chaos unfold with a victorious smile. Karen, once the queen of the HOA, had been humbled, and the best part, the community had turned against her for good. She lost her position of power, and her influence crumbled like the very tracks she had laid without permission. And me? I didn't just get my field back, I got the last laugh. If Karen thought she could keep playing games with me, she learned the hard way. When you mess with the bull, you get the horns, and I'm always ready to play. If Karen thought the train fiasco was the end of our battle, she was dead wrong. With the tracks being ripped out and her reputation crumbling, I expected her to lay low, but this was Karen, after all. She didn't know how to back down. Instead, she doubled down on her efforts to make my life miserable. And this time, she didn't just want to ruin my property, she wanted to ruin me. It started subtly. My mailbox mysteriously disappeared one morning, only to be found days later, stuffed into a drainage ditch. My trash bins were accidentally missed by the HOA's private waste service twice. And then came the noise complaints. Every time I so much as sneezed, Karen filed a formal grievance with the HOA. It didn't matter that I was following the rules. She was playing dirty, hoping to drown me in fines and frustration. But if Karen thought she could bully me into submission, she had no idea who she was dealing with, because I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to end her reign once and for all. I knew her weak spot, her ego. Karen had spent years crafting the perfect image of herself as the HOA's untouchable queen. If I could shatter that image in front of the entire community, she would lose everything. So I came up with a plan that was as bold as it was brilliant. I decided to host an event so massive, so spectacular, that it would expose every underhanded trick Karen had ever pulled. And the best part, I used the very bylaws she weaponized against me to make it happen. I filed a request to hold a community appreciation fair, a weekend-long celebration designed to showcase the neighborhood's best qualities. Of course, it wasn't just any fair. This was a public showcase of everything the HOA had done wrong under Karen's leadership, disguised as a cheerful neighborhood event. And because HOA rules prioritized community outreach, Karen couldn't block it without revealing her true motives. I spared no expense. I invited local reporters, community bloggers, and even a popular YouTube channel that specialized in exposing HOA abuses. I printed flyers highlighting every shady decision Karen had made, approved train tracks without permission, used HOA funds for personal landscaping, and even tried to silence dissenting homeowners. But I didn't stop there. I tracked down former homeowners who had left because of her harassment and gave them a platform to tell their stories. The day of the fair arrived, and the neighborhood buzzed with excitement. Booths lined the sidewalks, offering everything from homemade lemonade to free lawn care consultations. Families brought their kids, eager to enjoy the bouncy castles and live music. But the real attraction, a giant presentation board in the center of the park, detailing Karen's greatest hits. Each panel told a different story. How she fined a retired veteran for flying an American flag, how she secretly approved a train through my field, and how she targeted anyone who dared to question her authority. People gathered around the board, murmuring in disbelief as the truth came to light. Karen tried to keep her composure, but the cracks were beginning to show. Every smile she forced was a little tighter. Every step she took a little more rigid. And then I dropped the bombshell. Just as the afternoon crowd swelled, I stepped onto the main stage and welcomed a special guest, the county commissioner responsible for overseeing HOA regulations. In front of the entire neighborhood and a live streaming audience, he announced a formal investigation into the HOA's conduct under Karen's leadership. The crowd erupted in applause. Karen? She went pale as a ghost. I could practically see her world unraveling right before my eye. Over the next few weeks, the investigation dug into every shady decision Karen had made. Misappropriation of funds, unauthorized projects, intimidation tactics. The list went on. And when the final report dropped, it was clear. Karen had overstepped her authority for years. The HOA had no choice but to remove her from her position, effective immediately. Watching Karen pack up her office was sweeter than I could have ever imagined. She avoided eye contact as she loaded box after box into her car, the weight of her downfall hanging heavy on her shoulders. And as I stood there, victorious, I couldn't help but offer her a parting shot. Next time you want to mess with someone, I said, maybe pick a fight you can actually win. From that day forward, the neighborhood felt lighter, freer. The new HOA board repealed Karen's ridiculous policies, restored my property rights, and even issued a formal apology. The best part, with Karen gone, the community began to thrive without fear. And me, I got my peace of mind back. And a reminder that when you play your cards right, bullies always. With Karen officially dethroned and the HOA's stranglehold loosening, you'd think the battle was over, but not quite. Karen may have lost her title, but she wasn't the kind of person to walk away quietly. If anything, losing her position only made her more desperate for revenge. And this time, she wasn't playing by the rules. Strange things started happening around my property, things too calculated to be coincidences. One morning, I woke up to find my sprinkler system destroyed, wires ripped out and shredded. A few days later, my fence gate mysteriously fell off its hinges. But the final straw? A letter slipped under my door, unsigned of course, reading, "Some people don't know when to quit." I wasn't scared. I was ready. If Karen wanted to play dirty, I could play smarter. I installed high-definition security cameras around my entire property, front yard, backyard, even the alley behind my barn. Every angle was covered, and every movement would be recorded, and it didn't take long to catch her. Late one night, the motion sensors pinged my phone. I pulled up the live feed, and there she was, Karen, creeping along the fence line with a pair of wire cutters. I had proof, but instead of confronting her immediately, I decided to set a trap. One that would put an end to her antics once and for all. A week later, I held another community meeting, but this one had a twist. I called it a homeowner safety initiative, framing it as a way to address the rising incidents of vandalism in the area. I invited local law enforcement to speak about property rights and the legal consequences of trespassing. And of course, I included a special presentation, the security footage of Karen in action. As the lights dimmed and the first clip rolled, a murmur spread through the crowd. There she was, caught red-handed, snipping wires and tampering with property. I didn't say a word. I let the video do the talking. Karen, sitting in the front row, went beet red. For the first time since I met her, she was speechless. But it got worse for her. The officer on stage calmly explained the legal implications: criminal trespass, property damage, and harassment. He made it clear that if the homeowner, me, chose to press charges, it wouldn't just be fines. It could mean jail time. I could feel the crowd shift against her. Homeowners who had once been too afraid to speak up suddenly found their voices. People shared stories of threatening letters, arbitrary fines, and intimidation tactics. And just like that, Karen's last shred of influence was gone. After the meeting, I filed a restraining order, ensuring Karen couldn't come within 500 feet of my property. And the cherry on top? I sent the security footage to the local news. Within days, the story of the disgraced HOA president spread like wildfire. Karen became a local legend for all the wrong reasons. Her reputation was ruined, and she became a punchline in the community. Even months later, people still joked about the great Karen takedown. Meanwhile, life on my property became peaceful again. I rebuilt my fences, repaired the sprinkler system, and even turned the old train tracks into a community walking path. A constant reminder that no one, not even an HOA tyrant, could push me around. And Karen, she vanished from public life. Some said she sold her house and moved away, too embarrassed to show her face. Others swore they spotted her lurking around the edges of town, still hoping for some kind of comeback. But me, I didn't care. I had my land, my peace, and the satisfaction of knowing that when push came to shove, I won. And if Karen ever dared to mess with me again, well, let's just say my cameras were always rolling. Months passed, and life in the neighborhood returned to a peaceful, almost idyllic state. Without Karen's iron grip, the new HOA board focused on helping the community rather than controlling it. Rules were relaxed. Homeowners could finally make improvements without jumping through endless hoops, and the toxic environment Karen had created seemed like a distant memory. My days were filled with restoring my land, planting new crops where the train tracks had torn through my field, and enjoying the simple pleasure of not having to fight for my own property. But deep down, I knew Karen wasn't finished. People like her never walk away quietly, and I was right. It started subtly, too subtly. Random letters, unsigned but unmistakably petty, criticizing my lawn, my barn's paint color, and even the height of my fence. It was so childish, I almost laughed until I received an official-looking notice claiming that the HOA was considering reinstating fines for non-compliant homeowners. I knew Karen had to be pulling strings from behind the scenes, but how? She was banned from the HOA board, and the restraining order prevented her from stepping foot near my property. If she wanted to strike back, she had to be working through someone else. I decided to investigate, quietly reaching out to new board members I could trust. What I discovered made my blood boil. Karen had recruited a puppet, a newly elected board member named Debbie, freshly moved into the neighborhood. Debbie seemed harmless at first, but behind the scenes, she was Karen's eyes and ears, delivering insider information and pushing Karen's old agendas under the guise of community improvements. I had dismantled Karen's empire once. I wasn't about to let her rebuild it. It was time for one final move, a checkmate she wouldn't see coming. I dug deep into the HOA bylaws, searching for every loophole I could find. What I uncovered was pure gold, a rarely used clause that allowed homeowners to dissolve the HOA entirely if a majority vote was secured. If Karen wanted to control the neighborhood, I'd simply take away her playground. But pulling this off required careful planning. I couldn't rely on emotion. I needed facts, and more importantly, numbers. So I got to work. Over the next month, I organized private meetings with homeowners, sharing the truth about Karen's ongoing manipulation and how her puppet Debbie was laying the groundwork for her comeback. I showed them documents, emails, and even recordings that exposed every dirty trick they had tried to pull. The response was overwhelming. People were tired of being bullied. Freedom became our rallying cry. I drafted a petition to dissolve the HOA, needing signatures from 75% of homeowners to make it official. To ensure success, I launched a neighborhood-wide campaign, door-to-door visits, community barbecues, even a dedicated website explaining how eliminating the HOA would reduce fees, increase property value, and, most importantly, kick Karen out for good. My favorite move, hosting a freedom festival where families gathered to sign the petition while enjoying free food and music. Nothing brings a community together like the promise of sticking it to a mutual enemy. Karen, of course, tried to fight back. Through Debbie, she spread fear-mongering rumors that without an HOA, our community would fall apart. Property values will plummet, she warned. Your neighbors will turn their yards into junkyards. But by then, no one trusted her lies. I had proof on my side, and the neighborhood had had enough. When the final vote came, the results were undeniable. 82% of homeowners supported dissolving the HOA. It was over. The very institution Karen had weaponized for years was gone, and with it, every ounce of power she held over the community. The day the HOA officially disbanded, I hosted a victory party on my property, right where the train tracks once scarred my field. Neighbors cheered, toasted to our freedom, and laughed at the fall of the HOA queen. And as the sun set, I stood at the edge of my land, knowing that Karen's reign of terror was nothing but a bad memory. As for Karen, no one's quite sure where she went. Some say she moved to another HOA-controlled neighborhood because clearly she hadn't learned her lesson. Others say she's still lurking around town, bitter and broken, hoping for some twisted comeback. But I'm not worried. If she ever tries to mess with me again, she knows exactly how that'll end. Because on my land, I play to win. With the HOA officially dissolved and Karen's influence crushed, life finally felt normal, or so I thought. For a while, everything seemed perfect. My property was mine again, free from ridiculous rules and petty fines. Neighbors who once feared Karen's wrath were now friends, working together to improve the community on our own terms. Without the HOA breathing down our necks, we could actually enjoy where we lived. But deep down, I knew someone like Karen wouldn't go down without a fight, and I was right. At first, the signs were subtle, too subtle to connect directly to her. Random property damage started popping up across the neighborhood. First, my mailbox was smashed. I shrugged it off as a prank. Then, another homeowner's garden was destroyed, the plants ripped out overnight. But things escalated when I woke up one morning to find my entire irrigation system torn apart. Again, coincidence? Not a chance. And while Karen was banned from my property and legally restrained, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still watching. I wasn't going to sit back and wait for her next move. I decided to strike first. I hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her, and it didn't take long before we uncovered her new plan. With the HOA gone, Karen had shifted tactics, now working behind the scenes to create a shadow committee, a group of like-minded control freaks who shared her obsession with power. This wasn't about community improvement. It was about revenge, and I wasn't about to let her win. So I did what I do best. I played the game smarter. If Karen wanted to wage a secret war, I would expose her in the most public and humiliating way possible. I reached out to a local investigative journalist, someone who specialized in uncovering community corruption. Together, we put together a documentary-style expose highlighting Karen's history of harassment, her illegal activities, and her ongoing schemes to regain control. And, of course, I handed over the private investigators evidence, emails, recorded conversations, and surveillance proving she was pulling strings through her puppet committee. When the story broke, it exploded. News outlets picked it up, and soon the HOA tyrant returns became a trending topic online. Neighbors who had once feared Karen now laughed at her downfall, and those who had secretly supported her quickly distanced themselves. The shadow committee disbanded overnight. Karen, well, let's just say the spotlight wasn't kind to her. But I wasn't finished yet. I wanted to make sure she could never pull this kind of stunt again. Using the evidence, I filed a civil lawsuit against her for property damage, harassment, and emotional distress. And because Karen's past behavior had been so public, the case was open and shut. The judge ruled in my favor, awarding me financial compensation for every penny of damage she caused, and enforcing a permanent restraining order that banned her from contacting me, my family, or even setting foot in the neighborhood again. In the aftermath, the community came together like never before. Without Karen's toxic influence, neighbors worked hand in hand to rebuild everything she had tried to destroy. We planted new gardens, restored the damaged properties, and even turned the old HOA office into a community center where people could gather without fear of ridiculous fines or Karen's endless micromanagement. And as for me, I finally had my peace, the kind of peace that comes from knowing you fought back and won. My property was mine, my community was free, and the tyrant who had tried to control us was nothing but a bad memory. Every time I stood in my field, watching the sun rise over the land Karen once tried to ruin, I felt a sense of victory, a reminder that when someone tries to push you, sometimes the best response is to push back harder. And Karen, she vanished from public life entirely. Rumor has it she sold her house and moved far away, somewhere without an HOA to control. But if she ever decides to crawl out of whatever hole she's hiding in and try her games again, she should know by now, on my land, I always win.